Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us this afternoon for Amy Shackleton's solo exhibition, Imagine Futures. Amy will give a talk portion. I'll just give a little bit of introduction for those of you who might not be as familiar with Amy and her work. And then at the end, we'll have a question period for those who would like to ask anything they like to Amy. So without further ado, Amy Shackleton is obviously a Canadian painter using gravity as a collaborative partner in her painting process. She earned her BFA from York University in 2008 and has received several grants from the Ontario Arts Council. Shackleton's artwork has been extensively exhibited across North America and internationally, and her solo exhibitions have taken place at renowned venues, including the Museum in Kitchener, Ontario, Museum of Dufferin in Mulmer, Ontario, and the Gallery of Northumberland in Cobourg, Ontario. Notable group exhibitions she's participated in include the Carmichael Canadian Landscape Exhibition, Tradition Transformed, at the Aurelia Museum of Art and History, and award winners at the McMichael Canadian Art Collection. Shackleton's artwork has captured the attention of millions online and has been featured in Magenta Magazine, Huffington Post, and Lux Magazine. Among her accolades, she has received First Choice Awards from the McMichael Canadian Art Collection and Station Gallery. Shackleton's works can be found in public collections, including the Museum of Dufferin, Cole Art Collection, and Facebook Canada. Shackleton is currently based in Oshawa, where she lives and works from her studio. And I will pass it over to you, Amy.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. First, I want to start by expressing my gratitude to Tiffany, Phoebe, and the entire team here at Oshawa-based Gallery for inviting me to show my work, doing all the behind-the-scenes work to install everything. Thank you so much. I have been working on this new series of paintings for the better part of this year, so it's really amazing to see them all come together in this space on these beautiful walls. I'm going to talk a little bit about my art, my creative process, what inspires me, and what's next on the horizon. When I create my paintings, I like to envision what the future would look like if we can continue down our current path. It's important to me that people pause and reflect on the relationship between nature and cities. Having had the opportunity to travel extensively, I've witnessed firsthand the impact of human activity on beautiful natural landscapes. It's disheartening, but it also fuels my drive to raise awareness. Some of my paintings might instill a sense of optimism as they portray a beautiful world where nature and humanity coexist. Others might evoke a bit of unease, offering a glimpse into the consequences of climate change right before your eyes. Sometimes people have opposite reactions to the exact same painting, which I love. For example, the red and yellow piece over there called Glowing Light is inspired by architecture from Toronto and trees from Arizona. Some viewers may look at that piece and see light shining through an autumn forest on a beautiful afternoon, while others may look at the same piece and see a devastating wildfire consuming everything in its path. There's these two different, my work really toes the line or walks the line between the two worlds. I bring together different images from my travels to create unique compositions that blend natural elements such as trees, mountains, and bodies of water with man-made structures like skyscrapers, bridges, and highways. It's my way of showing how these two worlds can interact and find balance in unexpected ways. My painting, Time to Merge, which is the one with the roads here, is inspired by elevated roadways and trees from California. The concept of suspending the roads within the forest was sparked by the transformation of the High Line in New York City, a former elevated railway turned into a public park. In the artwork, some of the trees appear to break through the roads, hinting at their potential abandonment by cars. In 2008, I started using drips in my art to add a more natural, organic feel. Over time, I found working with drips more enjoyable than using paintbrushes and tape to create straight lines. As I became skilled at manipulating the paint's flow with gravity, I realized that I could eliminate the need for brushes altogether. This took me 3 years to master, and in 2011, I created my first brushless painting. Since then, I've fully embraced this approach. My style is a fusion of contemporary drip painting and imaginative realism. I apply paint with squeeze bottles, manipulating the falling drips with water spritzers and by rotating the canvas. Natural forms emerge out of this organic paint application that mimics how gravity and rain erosion actually create environments. In contrast, my urban imagery is built with architectural precision. Dripping paint is used to create straight lines that are pre-planned using levels and a ruler. As you can see, my works are filled with vibrant colors. The symbolism behind those colors has evolved over time. At first, I used highly saturated colors to express my optimism for a bright and colorful future. However, after having children, I became increasingly concerned about the world we're leaving them. Although my colors remain vibrant, their meaning has evolved to signal alarm and urgency. Due to the nature of my technique, I always have a plan. It starts with creating a digital study in Photoshop, combining 2 to 5 different images from my travels to different urban and natural locations. At this stage, I determine the composition, the color palette, and the subject matter. I then print it out on a little 4x6 photo paper and use that as inspiration when I'm creating my work. If I can bring your attention to this painting, I didn't know where I was going to be standing when I wrote this. So for example, this painting is called Watering Hole. It's inspired by architecture from Chicago. So I have one photo that I took in Chicago that I loved. Sometimes I'll combine several different buildings in one composition, but this was one particular photo I took on a bridge kind of overlooking the city. And I'll take that and I combined it with a forest from Kootenay National Park in British Columbia. This particular forest had been burnt by forest fires, and there was some regrowth happening, which I featured in the foreground. The waterfall is inspired by Maui in Hawaii, so I plunked that right in there, thinking that was a really good spot for there to be a pool of water. So when I'm, let me just find that spot. So when I'm juxtaposing all of these places, I'm paying close attention to the perspective of each environment, making sure that it'll line up and be somewhat believable as a single scene. Just need a sip of water. One of the most common questions that I receive is, how do you create these works without brushes? The answer lies in careful planning, patience, and practice. I won't sugarcoat it. My technique is challenging. It's not something you can master overnight. I've had a lot of people really interested in me teaching them how I create my work. I've thought about offering workshops in the past at one of my museum shows, and I ended up not pulling out because, the pandemic made me pull out anyways, but it doesn't matter. But I cannot teach someone how to do this in a workshop. It took me 3 years to do it myself, to discover how to do it. Through trial and error, I've developed the ability to work with drips, to predict their trajectory and manipulate them to achieve the desired effect. Even after more than a decade of working with squeeze bottles, I continue to learn new tricks and techniques. For example, any of these pieces here that have trees in them, There's one here and over there. The foliage in the trees was a recent kind of discovery for me. So the leaves on the trees were painted with the canvas actually lying down flat on a table. I used to work on the floor for years, and then I got pregnant, and I was like, oh, they invented these things called tables. I should elevate this. So it's much, much better. But I lay it flat, and I dilute my paint, my acrylic paint, and drip dots where I want the leaves to go. I then take a water spritzer and I spray it on the surface, and the droplets of water and the paint interact and create this really, really interesting texture that I fell in love with. And it was just one of those aha moments where in your studio that's like, this is going to change everything. My trees are going to be so full now. This is going to be amazing. Because before, I mean, it's really difficult to achieve that effect vertically. And most of my work is done vertically on my easel. So this was a very amazing realization. In my previous body of work, Playing with Fire and Ice, which was exhibited at a public gallery in Coburg and a museum in Dufferin County, I aimed to bring attention to the impact of climate change on the Canadian landscape. The series focused on the rise in extreme weather events. They're becoming more frequent, hitting closer to home. Lands are flooding, glaciers are melting, and as everyone here in Ottawa is very well aware, forests are burning. Inspired by this immediacy, my paintings presented local and national environments in the midst of ecological destruction to remind us that we're all playing with fire. The work was a call for action and a stark prediction for environmental futures. With my current work, I aim to shift the narrative towards a more optimistic outlook. As we continue to emerge from the challenges of the pandemic, I felt the need to infuse my artwork with a sense of hope and optimism. While acknowledging the environmental challenges we face, I shifted my focus towards presenting imagined futures where humans and nature coexist harmoniously. Lagoon Falls, which is the painting on the opposite of this wall when you first walk in the gallery, with that piece, I drew inspiration from Toronto architecture and a scenic lake with beautiful hanging waterfalls from Colorado. The soft color palette is calm and inviting. The turquoise pools of water are intended to reference more of a swimming pool than a flood. In this show, I imagine potential futures where urban and natural environments seamlessly blend together, drawing inspiration from my travels across various regions, including Ontario, Alberta, British Columbia, Colorado, Arizona, California, Chicago, and Hawaii. I've crafted unexpected compositions by merging diverse landscapes and cityscapes into single scenes. The result is a series of artwork that invites viewers to contemplate the harmonious coexistence of nature and urban life, and to imagine new possibilities for our surroundings. I offer glimpses of utopian vision to remind us that there is still time to make positive changes, to transform our ways, and to create a better world for all. I want to talk a little bit about social media and its role in my artistic journey. It has been an incredible platform for me to share my work with the world. I still recall the nerves that I felt when I posted my first time-lapse video back in 2011, right when I got my brushless thing figured out. And I wasn't fully prepared to expose my creative process with the world and face potential judgment. But the response it received was beyond incredible. It quickly reached 1 million views online on YouTube. I made the national news. My inbox was exploding. I was getting interview requests from everywhere from Brazil to Poland. And to top it off, I sold a few paintings, including the piece that I featured in the video. Since then, I've come to realize that the importance of showcasing my art online. I actually think a lot of you found out about my work because some of those videos. I've made it a habit to document my process in my studio. While I work, I typically have multiple paintings on the go at a time because my work takes a long time to dry between layers. So I'll work on up to 8 paintings at once. And I have a tripod with a iPad on it that moves around as I work. I try to capture the most interesting moments from each piece as I go. And I share them regularly online. For this show, I created a dedicated time-lapse video for each painting in the show. The videos are about 1.5 minutes, and they offer a journey through the creation of each artwork, from its initial stages to its completion. You can watch these videos on your phone today by scanning that QR code. It'll bring up a link tree with icons you can click on for any of the paintings in the show. So in the lead up to this show, I took to Instagram, Facebook, and now TikTok to post one of these new time-lapse videos every day for 12 consecutive days, which was a lot more work than I kind of expected, but anyways, it happened. I did it. Consistency was key, and the algorithm really loves consistency. So as a result, a lot of those videos ended up going viral. They captivated the attention of millions of people. Actually, over 7 million people saw the videos in the lead up to the show. Not that anyone's counting. And I'm truly humbled by the outpouring of love and support coming in from every corner of the globe. Amidst the overwhelming response, there have been numerous comments, questions, and of course, some unwanted opinions. One particular debate that caught my attention revolved around the trees in one of the paintings in this show, glowing light, the orange and red and yellow piece over there. Some voices suggested that I should have included fewer trees or none at all. Well, respectfully, I disagree. I understand that most of these comments are coming from people who aren't familiar with my work. But many people did find the buildings in that piece particularly striking and beautiful on their own, and they expressed a sense of disappointment that they were partially covered. Now keep in mind, they're watching the time-lapse video and they're like, oh, this building is so amazing. Oh, look at those lines. Oh, what? Trees. Can't see the building anymore. So now I lost my spot because I was touching the screen. Okay, so what I loved about these comments, although, yes, they're kind of intense, and, once someone says something, then 100 other people say the same thing. But anyways, it's precisely the point that I want to make, that those trees covered up those buildings. I aim to challenge the way that we think. My work goes beyond capturing stunning architecture. It seeks to integrate nature into the built environment. It's a call to change our perspective, to work alongside nature instead of against it. Yes, there are moments when nature may overcrowd and overtake architecture, but that's precisely the conversation that I hope to ignite. One thing I love about art is its ability to spark conversations, whether that be online or in person. While the idea of a perfect utopian world is appealing, the reality is that we face significant challenges. By exploring the tension between a positive vision for the future and the harsh reality of the present, I hope to inspire people to take action and contribute to creating a more sustainable world for ourselves and future generations. I would like to share some exciting upcoming projects that I have on the horizon. First, I've been selected to create a public art mural with the city of Oshawa during their upcoming Culture Days programming. So I will be painting a mural inside. Anyone here from Oshawa? I'll be painting a mural. Oh, you from Oshawa? Amazing! The South Oshawa Community Center. I will be painting a mural inside, making it visible to the public, and I will be collaborating with my husband, who's over there, Julian Brown, who will be bringing the mural to life with augmented reality. It's a whole other thing, and feel free to come and talk to us about that after. Back in 2020, I had the opportunity to create my first mural commission for the Oshawa Centre Mall thanks to an invitation from the Robert McLaughlin Gallery. I accepted the project without knowing exactly how I would execute it. Working on that mural presented its own challenges, the biggest of which is that I could not spin the wall. However, this constraint pushed me to discover new techniques and develop a love for large-scale public art projects. It's through taking risks that we uncover new possibilities. Since then, I've been incorporating these newfound techniques into my studio practice. One of my favorites involves using my squeeze bottles and a ruler. I don't know if anyone here is an artist and has tried to paint a straight line with a brush, but it is not easy. And you cannot use a ruler, will not help you. But with a squeeze bottle, it's all different. So a good example of that is the piece right back here with the staircase called Ups and Downs, Chicago and California. In this piece, I utilized a ruler to create clean, sharp lines that form the staircase. When I paint with this technique, I start from the bottom and work my way up, which is the opposite of how I typically work, allowing each step to flow seamlessly into the next. This creates a sense of fluidity, as if the staircase is a cascading waterfall, capturing the dynamic energy found in nature. In addition to these projects, I also have a list of private commissions that I'm currently working through. My schedule is booked until June 2024, so I have lots to do. And I'm particularly excited about one commission that I'm doing that is 8 by 8 feet, single canvas. So that will be the largest piece that I've ever spun on my easel in my studio. And also the max size piece that you can ship internationally to Texas, because trucks are only so big. But hopefully it all works out. Looking further ahead, Julian and I have our eyes set on attending an artist residency in London, England as an artist duo. However, this opportunity isn't 100% confirmed, so we're keeping our fingers crossed. Thank you all once again for being here. Your presence really means the world to me. I sincerely hope that my art not only sparks conversations, but also gets you thinking about the future and inspires you to take action. Thank you so much. Everything is dripped. So I use a few things to help with perspective in my work. First of all, like I was talking about how I do my best to overlap different locations into a single scene, and I'm always paying attention to perspective. My digital studies are probably less accurate than my actual paintings because I take that as an idea and then I pick the vanishing points and I work with that on the canvas. So a lot of these pieces have like 3-point perspective. There's multiple vanishing points on a single piece, and a lot of them are off the edge of the canvas. So what I use is string. So I'll pick my vanishing point. Now, if you see a behind the scenes photo of my studio, you will laugh because I pick random items in my studio, random walls, and I attach string to it. And, you know, it might be 15 feet over there, or it might be, you know, in the, like up, wherever it is. I rotate my canvas to whatever point it needs to be for that perspective point to be in the correct location. I'll use string to pre-plan. So, in this piece, I've got a perspective point in here for these buildings here. So I'll use string to basically plot out where my lines are going to go. And then, I'll use my squeeze bottles and little dots to kind of plan around where it's going to go. When that's dry, I'll rotate the canvas. So for this line here, I'll rotate the canvas so that this line is going to be straight down because gravity will take it straight down. That's where my level comes in. I use a level to predict exactly where I want that line to go. So I have my dots. It's like a dot to dot. I got my level and I'm like, okay, that bubble isn't exactly where I want it to be. I drip, it goes where I want. Most of the time. Actually, yeah, I've learned how to make sure that it will go where I want by doing things like making sure the layer below is dry, 100% dry. making sure there's no texture buildup of my paint because texture will affect the drip. It will steer it wherever it wants to go. I also make sure I mix my paint 24 hours in advance so there's no bubbles in it. Bubbles cause problems. But I've got it down to a bit of a science. Yeah, it is a constant balance because I want certain elements of my painting to be more organic and free flowing, but I want other elements to be extremely structured. And it does that's what I like, that's kind of how my technique developed because I wanted that organic kind of gravity can pull this wherever it wants. And in the beginning, it did, and it was unpredictable and I couldn't predict it. But then as time went on, I'm like, well, I can kind of know where it's going to go. Like, there's no surprise now. So yeah, it is this constant balance. So when I'm painting the natural elements, I try to let the paint be a little bit more free. I don't have complete control over what will happen when I spray a water spritzer on the paint. So for things like the waterfalls, best thing to paint with drips, like hands down, because it literally is drips. So I use a water spritzer. The more I use a water spritzer, the more unpredictable it is. So most of the natural elements are done that way. But yeah, I'll spray the canvas with water and I'll let the paint trickle down just like a waterfall would.
Yeah, I like seeing that, those moments of openness where you let that organic
Yeah.
through as well.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And you can see the underlayers as well. So a lot of these colors in here happened when I was working on the elements up here. So those layers I like to let shine through so you can kind of see the bits of the process. In some pieces it's more evident than others, but yes. Curves? So curves are fun. I don't have too many. Okay, yeah, there we go. There we go. The curve. Okay. Curves are very challenging. Very challenging. And I can only, for example, this section here, I only did one section at a time. Let it dry. Then did the other section. I can't go whoop, all in one go or it'll just completely cover the canvas. So as I'm working on a curve, I'll start here. And yeah, like I add a little bit of paint and I'm steering the canvas as the paint's dripping to create the curve. And I usually just do one element and let it dry before I work on another. I'm not sure if that answers your question. But yeah, as it's curving, I have to make sure I'm holding the canvas and steering it the entire way. Yeah. If I let go of the canvas. The actual canvas you mean on my easel? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I didn't understand what you were getting there. Yeah. Yeah. I have, I was explaining this, to someone right before the talk. That's one of my frequently asked questions. What are you spinning these on? You have some kind of a lazy Susan? Like what's behind those canvases? And it's actually the most low tech solution you could ever think of. My easel is made up of marine plywood leaning against a wall. And I have hex bolts and hex bolt inserts kind of spotted all along my easels. So depending on whatever I'm working on in different sizes, I can use whatever hole I need. So it's a hex bolt on my easel. And then every canvas has a center crossbar on the back. And every crossbar has a hole drilled in it. And I just set the hole on the hex bolt, spin. Now I make sure that hex bolt is the right tightness to make sure that if I stop spinning about on an angle, it'll stay. Yeah. But if I don't, then yeah, it'll just kind of, yeah. The blue is probably in most of my paintings. I love that color. Maybe it's because it goes with everything. It seems to go with everything. But that would probably be my favorite. I really love the translucent glazing that I can get with the blue. I do purchase the primary colors and black and white, and I mix all my colors. And it's liquid acrylic paint that I add water to. And depending on what effect I want to get, I'll add more or less water. Yeah, welcome. What would be next? This is the thing. I don't know what's next. These moments kind of just like happen. And then you're like, oh, I could use that for this and this and this and this. Like, for example, the leaf texture I also use for water, like at the bottom of a waterfall. Yeah, you never really know. Like the biggest thing, obviously, that happened. I was working in my studio. I used to work, this is like 2008. I used to work on unstretched canvas. I still had my wall easel, and I would nail the canvas up to the wall. If I wanted to change the angle, I would take the nails out, I would rotate it, I would nail it back in, and my neighbors were not too pleased. But working on unstretched canvas also meant that the surface was not flat. It often is kind of wavy, and in that way, it really helped with some of my more organic elements. To do any kind of hard edge details, I would use tape. I would use a lot of tape. I would build an entire building with tape. I would use brushes, and then I would rip it all off, and I have this big mound of tape, and I'm like, not a fan of the waste, but anyway, that was probably the part of my process I did not enjoy. And then one day, my paint must have been just right. It didn't have bubbles. It was the right consistency. And I was just doing my dripping, and the line went straight down. And I was like, what? And that was just like, if a line will drip straight down, that changes everything. That means that I can create concrete shapes using a drip. That means I need to train myself how to do this. And, the first thing that I had to do was stretch my canvases before I started to work to make sure I had a smooth surface. So yeah, I don't really know what's next, but hopefully something really cool. Any other? It was definitely a dream since I was in kindergarten. It was like one of those questions you have to fill out. What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be an artist. I had no idea what that meant when I was in kindergarten. Even when I was in high school, I didn't really know that it was possible to be a full-time artist. I grew up in Bowmanville. Most of my high school teachers kind of advised against it because they're like, I was a really shy kid. And they're like, I don't think you have the strength to be an artist. It's a lot. You need to have a thick skin. You need to be confident. You need all those things. And I got there. But I wasn't there in high school. But what advice? For me, it was like, follow your passion. If it's what you want to do, do it. I almost went into design school just because I wasn't sure. I wanted to do something creative. It wasn't for me, and my husband's a designer. It's definitely for him. Not for me. So I'm really glad that I went into the arts. And I would say when I got out of university, the best thing to do for a young artist is to get your work on the wall somewhere. Doesn't matter where it is. Maybe it's a restaurant. You need to get your art seen out of your studio into the public eye. I applied to every show I could possibly apply to, and it worked out for me. Yeah. Sometimes it depends. So like sometimes I'll have an idea when I see something in front of me, and sometimes it's kind of after the fact. Like when I have all my photos and I'm looking at them all, I'm like, oh, I really need to incorporate trees into this piece. And then I'll be like, where's some places that I went that had that type of tree that I want to incorporate? And I'll look at photos. And it's a lot of trial and error at that stage. I'm combining a lot of different things. It's kind of like a collage almost, where I'm trying to make something click in Photoshop. And then once I get like something working, that's when I get excited. That's when I'm like, okay, this is happening. This idea, this is gonna work. Then I work on the color palette, the composition. I digitally draw on the studies in Photoshop to kind of finalize my ideas, and then I'm good to go. Nobody. No. I honestly like. I don't find inspiration from other artists necessarily. I find inspiration from nature in the city. I'd say earlier on in my career, I was inspired by other artists to try new techniques and things, but not so much anymore. There's artists that I admire. I love Edward Vertinsky's work. It's right up my alley. There's a lot of artists that I follow online, but they do very different. The artists that I love do things completely different than me, and maybe that's what happens. It's like, well, I've filled this void with my stuff, so I love, what I don't do, if that makes any sense. But any other? Not really. So during that time, so I had a full-time job in an office right out of university because everybody needs a job to pay the bills. I was living downtown Toronto. I was commuting to North Toronto every day, over an hour on transit, and it just became too much. That job was not like in line with what I wanted to do. It's an office job, and I learned a lot from it, but I decided one day that I needed to talk to my boss about working less hours so that I could have more time in my studio. I was working in my studio every evening. They did not budge with the hours, so I ended up quitting instead, but on good terms. So they actually commissioned me to do 9 paintings for the office. So over the next month, I didn't know how to price my work. I was just like, well, what you would normally pay me to be at the office is what you get 9 paintings for. That is how we did it. And I painted like crazy and I loved it. And I was like, all right, we're just going to jump right in. Then soon after that, I was represented on Queen West and producing work, very regularly and quickly. And when you have deadlines, you make it work. So yeah, the trial and error period wasn't like this big, like upsetting time. At the time, I was just like creating a different style of work. It was just a little more abstract. People still connected with it. And it was kind of more of an evolving of my technique over that time.
Something you look forward to.
Yeah.
Whenever you have time for it, you would experiment.
Yeah, I think like every piece I did was an experiment, almost just trying to figure things out. Yeah. I don't. And the reason for that is because if you look at the work, there are glossy areas and there are matte areas, and there is no varnish that will do it. You have to pick one or the other. And to me, it's really important to have those two contrasting elements because of my themes of having nature in the city. You have that concrete city and it's kind of plasticky, and then you have nature that's more organic. So because of that reason, I don't.